So I rise to speak on the railway budget. What surprised us most when the railway budget was presented, that the Honourable Minister, in the course of the budget, punctured one great achievement which the UPA seems to be claiming, that in the first 5 years of its rule, it had turned the railways around and made it an organization from bankruptcy into an organization which was independent and which was a profitable organization. The Honourable Minister said that she would be bringing out a white paper on the performance of the Indian Railways, including its financial status in the last 5 years. Now, this indeed has made us extremely suspicious. I remember that the earlier railway minister, during the first 5 years of the UPA government, had compared the Indian Railways to a Jersey cow. And he had always said that it was a Jersey cow which had not been milked enough. And his own achievement that he always mentioned was that he is now been able to milk it adequately. What appears to have happened is that with this change of alliance in the UPA, the vision with regard to the railways also has changed. The Honourable Minister has just come, and I must concede that I am one of those who has a considerable amount of admiration for her ability to struggle and stick to her point of view. But there are some parts of her budget which have indeed been a disappointment to us. I also recollect that her predecessor, Laluji, considered one of his achievements that the turnaround was a subject on which Wharton and Howard expected him to lecture them. But what I have seen in this budget, sir, far from impressing Wharton or Howard, just turns the basic principle of management of any institution, the principle being that strengthen your core areas, concentrate on your areas of core competence, and ignore what is wholly extraneous and not relevant to your core areas. Some can be ignored, some can be outsourced. And this is a basic principle that any management institution would have guided us. There's a publication, sir, of what they don't teach you at the Harvard Management School. And I think with this kind of budget which has been prepared by the Honourable Minister, the next reprint or the edition of that can rewrite some of those basic principles where the Honourable Minister in the budget seems to have decided that as far as safety is concerned, as far as efficiency is concerned, as far as passenger comforts are concerned, these are secondary, and the irrelevant frills in the functioning of the railways becomes the primary concern as far as railways is concerned. So the basic management principle of any organization, be it government or be it non-government or commercial, or even a social organization, the basic principle being concentrate on your core areas, which is to provide a good service as far as freight and travel is concerned, and ignore the non-core areas. The minister has raised a debate of economic viability versus the social purpose or the social viability of the railways. Yes, there is an important social purpose, but then one is not an alternative to the other. If you have no economic viability, if you are not in a position to even sustain yourself, then where is the prospect of your being able to underwrite any social purpose? I think there is an unstated third purpose which the minister has not mentioned but which is evident from the budget, and which is the railway ministry wanting to become almost a parallel government. A government which undertakes functions which have otherwise no direct or indirect relationship with the railways, but then expand your own empire and get into areas which have no concern with the railways. I, sir, have serious doubts whether the allocations of business rules would even permit the Ministry of Railways or the Railway Board or Indian Railways to undertake a large number of those activities. So I went through the Honorable Minister's speech and I started highlighting the areas in the speech which a special concentration has taken place as far as this budget is concerned. I can quote from the speech, but for the convenience of the House to take time, I have just shortlisted some of them. These are all areas which are non-core areas, non-essential areas, where the energy of the railway should not be spent. And if the energy of the railways is going to be spent in these areas, the resources of the railways are going to be spent in these areas, then the beneficiaries of the service, whether it's passengers or it's industry or farmers in the case of freight, will be paying for something which they are not supposed to pay for. The railways in this budget has now proposed the following: construction of multifunctional complexes, including shopping areas and restaurants. Now, when has construction of malls become a function of the railways? Construction of budget hotels. The government of India and governments traditionally and conventionally are bad providers of hospitality. Had several hotels through its public sector, the ITDC. State governments had them, and the experience showed that you had to really send those hotels back to the private sector. The railways was operating hotels. The BNR railway had hotels at Ranchi and Puri. The railways found it was unable to run those hotels, and those hotels also have been given to the private sector now for management. Now the proposal is the railways goes back and start constructing hotels. Construction of indoor stadia for sports in various divisions, including one at the Indo-Bangladesh border. Construction of 7 nursing colleges. Now, I don't know whether under the allocation of business rules, this is a function of the Health Ministry or it's a function of the Indian Railways. I saw, sir, the number was not given at page 17 of the Honorable Minister's speech. The list of page 11, I stand corrected, the list of cities where railways has hospitals and like nursing colleges through a public-private partnership, 17 medical colleges to be established by the railways through public-private partnership. Now, medical colleges being established is a very useful purpose, but is it the function of the Indian Railways to start concentrating on establishment of 17 medical colleges? It doesn't stop with that. Laying down of optic fiber network throughout the country. Now, railways certainly has land. It can give a right of way. It can earn money from the right of way. But you have the Department of Telecom, you have various other agencies in the private and the public sector. And therefore, optic fiber network to be laid down on railway land by the railways. Establishment and improvement of printing presses in Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata and Chennai. Again, a non-essential activity. Printing function is something which can be outsourced. Commercial structures to be created on surplus land of printing presses. And the next one, I think it should be a note of caution from my friends in the left front. Takeover of the Basumati Sahitya Mandir a PSU of the West Bengal government. Now there is a PSU, an agency of the West Bengal government called the Basumati Sahitya Mandir, which also runs a small newspaper. And therefore that is now proposed and an offer is made that the railways is willing to take that over and run it, so that the railways can run that newspaper Basumati. Establishment of 1,000 megawatt power plant in a tribal area. Establishment of a training institution for young artisans and supervisors. Sir, as I said, the basic function of the railways is to provide us safety, is to provide us comfort, is to provide efficiency, and join the entire country through a network of railways. What now seems to be happening is that railways cannot be allowed to become a parallel government. The Prime Minister must seriously examine, if necessary, the Attorney General's opinion should be taken, whether the desire of the railways to transgress into all these areas is permissible within the domain of the Indian Railways. Is it a business or a function which is incidental to the work of the railways, or is it a gross constitutional violation of the allocation of business rules? Any ministry of the government, the External Affairs Minister is here, he can't say that my ministry will now set up a power plant because we seriously consider we must transact power with Bangladesh. These are functions, you have an allocated ministry for this purpose, and therefore the railways, not becoming a parallel government, must stick to its area of core responsibility, whether it's the economic viability or the social viability of areas where the railways is supposed to really function. And I think this is an issue on which the government and particularly the Prime Minister will have to take a larger view. Sir, I have gone through this budget and the speech of the Honorable Railway Minister, and I must at this stage compliment her, and I say this with all sincerity, where she tried to be very candid about the true state of the railways itself. But there were three passages when I read between the lines which made me, I must confess, a little suspicious. Because in the last 5 years we were being told how now the Jersey cow is being milked, how now a bankrupt organization has turned around, and there were questions being raised, and therefore lectures were being organized all over the world as to how the turnaround has come. But the present Honorable Minister was very candid, though she tried on the principle of responsibility of a minister to be a little somewhat restrained. But there was a giveaway as far as her speech was concerned. At page 28 of her speech, the minister said, and I am quoting from her speech, and there she refers to the interim budget which Laluji presented. I was surprised to find that there was a provision for rupees 3,400 crores for railway mobilization through PPP, of which rupees 3,300 crores would just not materialize. So the present minister has inherited a legacy where there is an entry of and a provision for 3,300 crores. On the minister's own admission, in the interim budget, the money doesn't exist. Her next giveaway at page 19 was, based on a review, it is clear that unrealistic high targets set in the interim budget are not sustainable and warrant a mid-course correction. I compliment the Honorable Minister for being more realistic. Her third giveaway was obviously what I have referred to at page 37, where she says, I would like to assure the House that the railways will come out with a white paper indicating its present organizational, operational and financial status based on its performance in the last 5 years. Now, I was curious, when there is a continuous government which has got a second term, the UPA government, why should the present minister only concentrate on the financial status of the last 5 years? She did not concentrate on the phase when the NDA was in power. Why is it that the financial status of the last 5 years was under question? Because we were told that there is 25,000 crores of profit. We were told that the railways has a cash surplus. But then, sir, truth has a very inconvenient and an uncanny habit that if you try and conceal it, the more you conceal it, the more it leaks itself out. After all, the speech of the Honorable Minister is a final draft which is approved and which is delivered. There could be some last minute changes in the draft. And fortunately for this country, the penultimate draft which was changed last minute was put on the website of the railways. And after being put on the website of the railways was withdrawn because the wrong draft had been put. So there was a curiosity raised as to what is the difference between the two speeches. I am sure this must be a bona fide lapse and not a conscious error. But the country became wiser because we realized that there was no cash surplus. The paragraph which was removed, but which unfortunately saw the light of the day, as far as the website is concerned, read, and I am quoting from it. To fund our massive network expansion programs, completion of capacity enhancement, works timely replacement of overaged assets, planned expenditure has been sustained in the 2 years, 2008-2009 and 2009-2010 through drawdown from our accumulated fund balances, which may not be possible in the future. Therefore, we are now told that in order to plan the expenditure, there is no cash surplus that the railways has from this 25,000 crore or so earning every year, or 9,000 crore as we are now being told. You had to go back to your reserves, and in order to plan the expansion, you had to take away the money from the reserves. This is the real financial position as far as the railways is concerned. And then when we started analyzing the accounts, because the accounts of the railways, as any public expenditure, is approved by the other house, so a question legitimately arises: why is the minister saying that there must be a white paper? Why is the minister saying that 3,300 crores is not traceable, this money will never be realized? Why was this paragraph taken out that you had to eat into the reserves in order to plan the expansion? Because the true picture of the reserves is that at the end of the year you start change an accounting system, and there are several examples which are now available of how a jugglery of accounts of the railways has been done in the last 5 years. And one simple illustration is, there is a public sector organization, a financial body that they have, called the Indian Railway Finance Corporation. The Indian Railway Finance Corporation leases out the rolling assets of the railways, the locomotives, the wagons, the coaches, from private sector and pays them lease rental. Now this lease rental which you pay for being used for the purpose of the railways, this lease rental is always a legitimate expenditure of the railways, and therefore while drawing your accounts it must go as an expenditure, a working expenditure of the railways. For some curious reason in the year 2005, this ceased to be shown as a working expenditure of the railways and is put in a non-expenditure category, even though it is a rental, lease rental being paid. It is not merely, Mamtaji, the 3,300 crores which you will never be able to find out. The figures now are 1,608 crores for 2007-8, 1,810 crores for 2008-2009, 2,209 crores for 2009-2010. You add these three figures up, add your 3,300 crores up, you will straight away find that 9 to 10,000 crores are missing. And that is why the railways had to then go back to their reserves to even fund their expansion, and this so-called existing profit was just not there. Now, this issue has been noticed by the CAG. And the CAG also in its report comments on this, that how is it, the CAG, I read from the report, says, according to the railways are now considering charging capital component of IRFC lease charges from the surplus after payment of dividend. However, for the year so and so, the same has been booked as miscellaneous expenditure, resulting in a net figure of the net miscellaneous expenditure. Now, it's taken out as far as working expenditure is concerned. So, if you have accounts being juggled in this manner, and sir, when we see the performance of the railways, this is not the only area where this jugglery of this kind has taken place. 5 years this country has been misled, not only on the question that railways has made huge profit. Each one of us, every Indian would be under an impression for 5 years railway tariffs have not been increased as far as passengers are concerned. For 5 years, we are told कि किराए के अंदर 5 साल हमने 1 रुपया नहीं बढ़ने दिया. And we lived in, and Parliament approves this expenditure, Parliament approves these accounts. And when we go and start analyzing what is it that has taken place, happened, you announce it in the budget, you announce in the course of your budget speech that expenditure is, that tariffs are not being increased. You go back and what do in the course of the year? I'll just give you some illustrations. And I would urge the Honorable Minister, she had partly, only partly in a small manner tried to correct one of those factors. There is a difference in tariff as far as passenger train is concerned, superfast train is concerned. If a train is faster by 55 kilometers or more, it's a superfast train. Today you have 374 trains at less than 55 kilometers. Their speed is not increased. They are at 40 and 45 and 50 kilometers. So they would be ordinary passenger trains. Their classification is changed as superfast. As a result of which, every traveler there has to pay 8 rupees more or 50 rupees more. The range is 8 rupees to 50 rupees. The Parliament may have to seriously consider whether these amounts, all these transgress into a breach of privilege of Parliament. When Parliament is being told that we have not increased the tariffs, without increasing the speed of the train to beyond 55, you just redesignate the train into superfast. That's not all. You start an inbuilt charge on reservations. How is the charge increased? You book your ticket from Chennai to Delhi and back. Every passenger has a return journey, he has to come back home. So Chennai to Delhi is from your booking station where you book the ticket. But when you reboard the train from Delhi way back to Chennai, you have reboarded it back from a station other than where you booked the ticket. So a surcharge on that. So a return ticket would cost extra. But this is not on. The Tatkal scheme should be abolished immediately. This Tatkal scheme is a living scandal. The railways has a monopoly. There is no other agency which can provide you a train travel. The Tatkal scheme, the government as a monopolist first decided to create a scarcity of tickets. So every time a reservation has to be done, a certain part of the tickets are not available for sale. It could be 30%, it could go up to even 50%. So when you hold back a number of tickets, an artificial scarcity is created. If an artificial scarcity is created, there will be various difficulties. Then those tickets are released at the last minute. And how much do you pay for that ticket? Officially, you pay for a sleeper 150 rupees extra. For an air conditioner, you pay 300. Conditioned travel, you pay 300 rupees extra. Mamata ji has now been kind enough to say this 150 will become 100.
And non-returnable.
And this continues. And Parliament for 5 years has been misled and been told that not a single rupee fare has been increased in 5 years. Look how I turned railways around, how we turned railways around without increasing the fare. The CAG went into this question. And the CAG now says, in the budget speech, the railway minister announced that there would be no increase in the passenger fare during the year 2005-2006. However, various components of passenger fare other than basic fare such as reservation charges, super fast charges, cancellation charges, clerkage charges were all revised. And therefore you saw a massive increase in the burden on the traveller, but the country was being misled that no, we have not changed it. We have not charged more. This has now really become a matter where, as I said, the debate that the Honourable Minister has launched in this budget is economic viability versus social viability. But then there is a second issue also. Does Indian Railways requires to be saved from the politics of the railway minister? And this is the experience of the Indian society. Your accounts don't reflect the true position. You want to transgress into areas which don't belong to the railways. You tell the whole country that tariffs are not being increased and passenger fares are increased. And railway budget is an occasion of great festivity. It's an occasion to announce various kinds of schemes. Let us see what seems to have happened. The present railway minister, this is her second innings as a Honourable Minister of the Railways. She has presented two earlier budgets. Now we know what does the present budget say? How do we exploit railway land? How do we modernize stations? How do we create an optic fiber network? How do we create budget hotels? I said just glance through what ministers have been saying for the last 6-7 years in each budget. And this goes on irrespective of the government in power. 2000-2001, the present railway minister's budget, railways shall set to participate in the IT revolution, the nationwide broadband, telecom, multimedia network by laying optic fiber. 2001-2002, 750 crores earmarked for optic fiber network. Now between 2000, I could understand, we were still on the initial stages of this IT revolution. Between 2000, 2001 and 2009, 2010, private agencies, Department of Telecom, Defence, various agencies, there's a huge network of optic fiber network which has been established in the country. Now we come to the 2004 budget. Laluji presented his first budget and he says, these are the facilities which I am going to provide at every railway station. Such works shall be in progress at 1100 stations. So in 2004-2005, we are told by Laluji, we will have modernization of 1100 stations. So most of us have been traveling by train since our childhoods. And let us honestly ask ourselves a question. On the railway stations, have we seen any improvement since we first traveled in our lives?
None.
Are the waiting rooms better? Are the toilets better? Are the food facilities better? So 2004 we are told, let's have modernization as far as the railway stations are concerned. 2005-06, Several public-private partnership initiatives are being taken to garner resources through non-traditional methods of our modernization and development of railways and to provide enhanced facilities for users. Prominent amongst them are private sidings, commercial utilization and surplus laneway land for construction of modern railway stations, provision of passenger amenities, logistical parks, initiatives relating to parcel and optic fiber network. I think these have now become templates as far as the railways is concerned. Modernization of stations, optic fiber network, construction of budget hotels, and we forget what is the core purpose as far as railways is concerned. 2006-07, to modernize passenger amenities, we have decided to make A and B category stations into modern stations. All these facilities will be available in the next 2 years. Not one station has been changed. 2007-08, the Parliament is told that I am now setting a deadline. Sir, last year I had announced within 2 years we will observe perceptible improvement in the and give a facelift to the stations. According to this announcement, we had started the work on developing 5 railway stations as model stations in each division. This work is going to be completed on 225 stations by March 2007. Now, March 2007 is over 2.5 years ago. Forget 225 stations. We are yet to see one modern world quality station which is coming up. So there has to be some look at the big picture as far as the railways is concerned. Is the railway budget only, as I said, an occasion for politicking and expansion of politics as far as the railway minister is concerned? Or is the railway budget going to actually go into the details of how the railway structure in this country has to be improved? So there can be no doubt we criticize the British on various counts, and we can legitimately criticize them. They ignored the roadways completely. But the Indian railways was essentially constructed by the British during the British period. At times I wonder, even when we are resentful for them having ruled us, that if the British had ignored the railways like the roadways, what would we have done in the last 62 years? The British left us behind a track length of 55,596 kilometers. In 62 years, we are 63,940. In the last 10 years, we have added 250 kilometers. The number of locomotives, of course, today the capacity is much better, is 8,330. The British left us 8,209. Passenger coaches have gone up from about 13,000 to 40,000. But the wagons, Ram Gopal ji was saying, is broadly the same. He is only partly incorrect. From 2,05,596, it has come down to 2,04,034. So the number of wagons are numerically less. The capacity of the wagon may be more because of the size. Now, if we recollect from the period when the British left us, and this is the core area as far as the railways is concerned, sir. The Prime Minister has made a statement after the Honorable Minister presented the budget that the government's honest desire, he said, is to make a railway travel an enjoyable journey. World over, this is the experience. You save time when you travel by railways. You see the beautiful countryside. The time efficiencies are there, cleanliness is there. And that is what the Honorable Prime Minister had in mind when he said, let's make railway an enjoyable journey. What did we do? From the time the British left us, what we ignored completely was the safety as far as the Indian Railways is concerned. And it is not merely safety. Sir, it is also the economic efficiency and viability of the railway that we ignored. My friend Rajiv Shukla just now said that does this period of 62 years include your 5 or 6 years? Yes, it does. But then there was one major change which came in that period. We must broadly understand how the economy of the railway functions. Whether a train has 8 coaches or it has 10 wagons, or it has 20 or 25 wagons, railway is one industry where the fixed costs broadly remain the same. The locomotive running expenditure will be the same. The track is a property of the railways, the stations are property of the railways, the staff would broadly be the same, they are being paid salary by the railways. Therefore, if you run a small train or a lighter train, the possibility of the railways having losses would be far higher. Therefore, the underlying principles globally as far as railways is concerned, that if you have a goods train of 12 wagons, in all possibility, the fixed costs will not be recovered. The fixed costs will remain the same, but if you have a 24 wagon train, you are now having a longer train. And in a longer train, you will be able to carry more, and therefore you will have larger profitability. But will your track be able to take the weight of that longer train? And the reason why we were suffering losses were 3. Our trains were shorter as far as their length was concerned. Our trains were lighter. They could not be loaded to their full capacity. And therefore, we had to even have slower trains with longer turnaround times. So you had the asset of the railways, but because we did not make any investment into strengthening the infrastructure that the British had left us, the railways stood to suffer because we were running 12 coaches or 12 wagon trains, smaller trains. And then came, during the NDA government when Mr. Nitish Kumar was the railway minister, he made a public issue out of it that railways will turn bankrupt, the trains will not be able to carry enough load, the trains will be smaller in size, will never be able to be commercially viable. Therefore, from the planned expenditure and railways internal accruals, please support the railway safety program. And the then government headed by Shri Vajpayee sanctioned 17,000 crores as a special railway safety fund. And I must admit that Laluji in one of his speeches has referred to it in a very correct manner, saying that in one of his railway speeches how this fund helped. Now this 17,000 crore fund is used to strengthen the railway track. And the result of this strengthening is that from 2003-2004, with better signaling and better railway track, the railways was supposed to have longer trains. So you started having 24 coaches or bogies or wagons train, 26, 28. When Laluji became the minister, it is because of that turning point, he was able to have a larger axle load, and therefore the 3 buzzwords were longer trains, heavier trains, and faster turnaround. And suddenly you started having a lot more earning as far as freight is concerned. So the railways today, and I'm sure the Honorable Minister has an earlier experience, would bear with me, functions on 2 economic principles. The first being that unless your freight is commercially competitive, you will lose out on the freight because the freight will move to the roadways. Now we have the national highways coming up. So if you make it unreasonably priced, people will start traveling by road. So it has to be market driven and the freight must be at a reasonable level. At the same time, the utilization of railways assets must be to the optimum. The track, the stations, the facilities. And this turnaround came with that safety fund during that tenure of Mr. Nitish Kumar, when he campaigned across the country and wanted that fund, and that fund finally showed dividend, and the railways turned around on that. So you had a whole complexion being changed. Now this, the second principle being that passengers never pay the full fare of what it costs the railways. The passengers are subsidized as far as the freight is from the freight earnings. So your freight has to be market-wise competitive with the roadways. But at the same time, it has to earn you enough so that you are able to subsidize the passengers. Now the railways has functioned under this principle. Having functioned under this principle, madam, if the mandate of the Prime Minister is to be followed, and I do believe the Prime Minister is right when he says that this must be followed, some basic questions will come up. How do you make, the Prime Minister says, railways an enjoyable experience? If you have unclean toilets at the railway stations or in the compartments, if the food is substandard, if the linen being served to the passengers is not properly maintained, if there are no resting places as far as the stations are concerned, I think time has now come to think in terms of the future. And when you think in terms of the future, I think there are two important considerations the Honorable Minister must at least consider for the purposes of at least a pilot project or initiating a debate in the society. I am not saying for a moment that these are things which must be done forthwith, because unless we have an experience of how it works in Indian context, there is no point getting into those areas. The railways has two basic functions. Its operations, safety, ownership. These are broad operational functions of the railways. The second is the management of the hospitality as far as the passengers are concerned. Now, are railways the best managers of that hospitality? I am told that the railways in relation to two trains are now starting it as a pilot project. The Delhi-Bangalore Rajdhani and perhaps another train. The minister should share with the House at some stage what is the experience of, in these pilot projects, taking even outside help as far as hospitality is concerned. The maintenance of cleanliness, the maintenance of your waiting rooms, your toilets, etc. Food management. Even the present arrangement of food management through the catering organization of the railways, through private contractors, has now led to a huge amount of cartelization. You have a limited number of people who have set up companies by different names, who have cartelized and who are managing the entire service. The minister has a daunting task ahead of her, how to crack these cartels. Therefore, outsourcing some of these hospitality functions, after all, the airlines, which caters to a little economically more better class of, economically superior class of passengers, gets its food from outside. The airlines doesn't know how to manage the food management to be served on the aircrafts. So world over it is done from outside. World over, train hospitalities are done from outside. Is it feasible as far as Indian society is concerned? And therefore, we must seriously consider this particular experiment. Secondly, in the turnaround of the railways, one of the essential requirement is that the railways have a huge asset. And I think we in India have a phobia as when we see land, we think in terms of commercializing it. Railways has land, I am not referring to the commercialization of that land at the moment. Because in today's environment, how much will the minister be able to commercialize that land, even though she has made some ambitious announcements? I have serious doubts.